Hey guys, this is Miss Ratcliffe and Miss Reyes, and we're going to be talking about sterility and your sterile field.
Okay, so we're going to talk about some principles of surgical asepsis. We always want to make sure that all items used within a sterile field must be sterile.
Okay, and so how you know that something is sterile is you're going to make sure that it is labeled as sterile. Make sure you can see this, okay? So if you look, it says right here, sterilized. Can you see it on there? Okay, so any item that you're using has to be labeled as sterile for it to be sterile. There are items that we use in hospital facilities that are not sterile that are packaged. So you need to make sure that it is sterile.
Okay, and so the second thing is we're going to make sure a sterile barrier that has been permeated by punctures, tears, or moisture must be considered contaminated.
Okay, so if you get anything wet or anything rips, your field is no longer sterile.
Once a sterile package is opened, a 1-inch border around the edges is considered unsterile.
Okay, so I'm going to use this paper real quick. So this sheet of paper, if this is your sterile field, you have an imaginary 1-inch border that goes all the way around. So if we lay this flat and I am touching, I can touch this 1 inch here, okay? I can move it around, okay? But I won't be able to touch in the center because that is sterile. So you have 1 inch all the way around.
Okay, so tables draped as part of a sterile field are considered sterile only at table level.
Okay, so if my sterile field goes off the table, all this off the table is no longer sterile.
If there is any question or doubt about the sterility of an item, the item is considered to be unsterile.
Okay.
Sterile people or items contact only sterile areas. Unsterile people or items contact only unsterile areas.
Is my hand sterile right now? No, I don't have a sterile glove on. So if my sterile field is right here, doing this means an unsterile item just touched a sterile item, which means the sterile item is no longer sterile.
Movement around or in the sterile field must not be compromised or contaminate the field.
Okay, so you can't reach over like this, okay, because that's contaminating, okay? So if you're going to get something, so say I have something over here I need to get, I am not going to go like this. That is wrong. If I reach over, I'm contaminating. There's particles on my hand that I could be sprinkling on my sterile field. I'm going to reach around.
A sterile object or field out of the range of vision or an object held below a person's waist is contaminated.
Okay, so any sterile field, like if I have sterile gloves on and I drop my hands below my waist, my hands are no longer sterile. Everything has to stay above the waist. And if you've already watched our sterile glove video, you know I hold my hands like this, everything above. And then if you have your sterile field open right here, you never want to turn your back like this. If you turn your back, it is considered contaminated because you can't see what happened when you turn your back.
A sterile object or field becomes contaminated by prolonged exposure to air. Stay organized and complete any procedures as soon as possible.
So it's really important that you make sure that you review the skill before you start it and you know what you're doing, and you don't want to spend a lot of time with it open because the longer your sterile field is open to air, the more likely it could be contaminated. In addition to that, if you have fans moving or windows open or anything like that, you need to minimize airflow because air moving over a sterile field can actually contaminate it. So be very mindful of that.
Okay, and that is the principles of surgical asepsis.
Okay, these are things you need to know, so memorize them.
Okay, so now we're going to go over the sterile field skill with you. You have a couple of different checkoffs that you're going to have for this. The first one is going to be the opening of a sterile package on a surface. And always remember that you need to verify the procedure that requires the surgical aseptic technique. You're going to look for latex allergies, and you're always going to check the package.
Okay, make sure that there's no punctures, and that make sure it is sterile, and also make sure that it is not expired.
So the first thing that she's going to do after she's gathered her supplies is she's going to wash her hands. And she's going to select a clean, dry, flat work surface above waist level.
Your bedside tables are not clean until you clean them.
She's going to open the outside cover and remove the package and place it on her work surface.
If you don't know what items are in your sterile packing, usually it comes with a list. So make sure you check that out. I always make my work surface work for me. So I'm going to put a trash can right next to me, okay? So I can just drop it in there. Also, make sure your bedside table is raised to a working height, a comfortable working height.
Okay, so she's going to start by grasping the outermost flap away from her body, keeping her arms stretched and away from the sterile field.
Okay, if you saw me turn it, it's because it was facing this way. So make sure your first flap should be going directly away from you. Okay.
So she's going to grasp the outer surface of the edge on the first flap and open it by pulling to the side and allowing it to lie flat on the surface. So you can kind of see that. And she's going to repeat this process with the second with the first. Here she goes. She's going to repeat the process with the second side flap. And then the third, she'll grasp the outside border of the last innermost flap and stand away from the sterile package and pull the flap back, allowing it to fall flat on the table.
Okay, and I also, at this point, like to turn my stuff because I am all about straight things. Ooh, okay, now that may happen to you. What you can do, this is reality, y'all, this is what's going to happen. You can walk over here very carefully, pull it down. Because remember, we have that nice little 1-inch border that we can mess with as much as we want. There we go.
Okay, and so she's just going to repeat that process until all the items are exposed in the field as needed.
Okay, let us know if you have any questions.
Okay, guys, so now we're going to open a sterile package in your hand. You're going to open up the packaging from the outside. Okay, so you're going to place the package in your hand. We'll get close so that way as you can see how she's holding the package. Okay, so can you turn it just a little bit so we can see? So she's got her thumb under that first flap. So what she's going to do is she's going to carefully peel the wrapper back in the non-dominant hand in the following manner. She's going to open the first flap away from her and transfer the paper to the non-dominant hand while holding the sponges. She's going to repeat opening the remaining flaps as they become available away from the midline, making sure not to cross the sterile field.
And again, make sure you
and she's
have
in there
that
tucking
1-inch border, okay? Now, it looks like I might want to go this way, but I don't. I want to go back here, and I want to go this way so I'm not crossing over. And as I'm doing that, I'm tucking it into my hand. Now, I've got to look to find that last little corner very carefully, very intentional with what I am grabbing, okay? Okay.
So she's going to hold the wrapper as it is opened with a non-dominant hand in order to expose the lap sponges. And she's going to hand the items to the instructor or toss the item onto a sterile field.
Okay. Would you like to get me a sterile field, ma'am?
Yes.
So we're going to pretend like this was just opened and it is a field, okay? So you don't want to drop on top of because that is going to, you could potentially sprinkle contaminants. You're going to toss it in, and hopefully I'm going to be able to make this. You have to get it within that, inside of that 1-inch border, all right? 1, 2, 3, just like that. Okay, let us know if you have any questions.
Okay, guys, so now we're going to pour sterile solutions into a sterile field. And you can see Miss Ratcliffe has a package in front of her that is a sterile package, and so she's going to show us how we're going to open this up and get it ready.
before I start, I'm going to make sure that my area works for me, make sure my bedside table is a good working height, and that my trash receptacle is somewhere where I can access it easily. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is wash my hands. Okay, so I'm going to wash my hands. Make sure your bedside table is also clean. Just because it doesn't appear to be dirty does not mean it is clean. Please wipe it down before you start. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is open up my sterile package. Remember, we have our 1-inch border.
Okay, and she's going to verify the contents and expiration date of the solution.
Okay, if you do get an expired solution, just know that on a person you would not use expired solution.
Okay, so she needs to make sure that she has a receptacle for her solution located near the work surface edge.
Okay,
and she needs to remove the seal and cap from the bottle in an upward motion.
If your liquid is brand new and you don't have, if it hasn't been opened, you do not have to lip it.
Right. So if the bottle has been previously opened, the lip solution, you have to lip the solution into a waste receptacle while turning the bottle one full turn. So
I'm also going to use my palm to cover up the label, just to make sure that any contaminants from the label will not get on anything. Okay, so now I'm going to lip it one full turn. So we're just pouring a little bit of liquid out all the way around. Okay. All right, so we have lipped our solution.
Okay, so with the solution bottle held 1 to 2 inches above the sterile receiving container, you want to slowly pour the needed amount of solution into the container. You're going to make sure that you hold that bottle with the label facing in the palm of the hand, just like she is.
Okay.
Okay, and that is how you do your pouring of the sterile solutions.
And as you noticed, I didn't put the cap down. So you got to be careful because your cap can't get contaminated either. Okay, let us know if you have any questions. Right. So this is specifically for upward mobility. For their dropping in, we don't have the surgical sponges for you to open in your hand, so we're going to use something different. So again, if you're dropping anything into a sterile field, you need to make sure that it is labeled as sterile. This is going to depend on the procedure that you're doing with your patient, and you could have to drop in various things. We're not going to open up a field. We've already done that in a different section of the video. So my field is already open. My hands are already clean. I have verified that my item is sterile. And previously we have talked about this being a drop-in. But again, one of our rules is to not go over our sterile field. So if you're dropping something on top of, you're technically contaminating. So we're going to do a toss-in. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is very carefully open up my package. And as I'm opening this, I'm making sure that I'm keeping the item inside of that sterile area. Can you see pretty good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I have it open. Okay, so I'm going to come over here to the side and I'm going to carefully toss this into my field. Now remember, we have a 1-inch border, so we have to get it inside of that sterile area. If it lands on the 1-inch border or not in the field, it is considered contaminated and you need to toss another one in. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take this and I'm going to toss it in. 1, 2, 3. Beautiful. Awesome. We actually had to take this a few times. So if your item does roll off into the trash can like mine did, it's okay. You're just going to get another one. All right, y'all. The most important thing is that you know when you've broke sterility and you announce it and start over. Let us know if you have any questions.